this year will contribute 90% of total exports, disregarding the much touted diversification of our economy. This 2022 budget should really be entitled Santa Claus for the Rich and Scrooge for the working poor. The latter has been granted a misery maximum of 2,800 increase in their disposable income, compliments of the minister and his new tax threshold. Mr. Speaker, instead of addressing the disposable income of the poor, the PPPC would rather send their ministers out with suitcases of cash into the regions and have poor mothers go before the cameras and kiss the royal hand in deep appreciation of the Because We Care grant. That, sir, is the indignities of charity. Mr. Speaker, the government's answers to high market prices, the spiraling cost of living. They're blaming the middlemen, their friends, for price gouging. Instead of addressing the root causes of these problems, their response is farmers' markets. As for the rollback on freight charges for importers, which the Minister of Finance has stated will save some $6 billion, last year, GRA was compelled to beg these importers to pass on any savings to the consumers. Despite all the government claims of removing more than 200 taxes, thus reducing the burden on the working poor, that has not happened in the last 18 months. Nothing has decreased. Mr. Speaker, another one of the PPP tax breaks that has backfired is that what was given to the gold sector. Recall how the miners begged and cried for concessions, yet in 2021, this sector recorded 11.3 lower decorations, even though gold prices was at its highest level. Mr. Speaker, this budget prioritizes the private over the public, the rich over the poor, individual wealth over common national prosperity. Note the measures for private health and life insurance, yet glaringly absent are measures to help the national insurance scheme meet the needs of the working citizens, or public hospitals and schools to keep their qualified and experienced staff. Nothing aimed at even helping the working poor, getting to work, not a single word on the public ground transportation. Just a mention, sir, of more roads. Mr. Speaker, there's more money for prison cells and magistrate courts. For those who dare to stand up against this heartless regime, however, nothing they can do will stifle the growing voices of discontent in the population. Mr. Speaker, the emptying of the full amount of savings from the National Resource Fund is beyond reckless. Hillbillies type disregard for a country's economic stability. This is a budget for the rich and crumbs for the poor. Mr. Speaker, in my previous budget speeches, I had cause to state that the return of the PPPC signals the return of money for the boys. An examination of the 2021 procurement only highlights what the nation has always known. This government is about projects for family and friends. Here, sir, is a few examples. In 2021, last year, sir, based on public records and disclosures in the health sector, the new GPC received $13.8 billion in contracts, sir, 70 million US. And so we're all aware who's the best friend of the owner of that company. Western Scientific Company, sir, the company that was blacklisted by the IDB in 2016 for fraudulent practices, received 5.6 billion, 28 million US dollars from the Ministry of Health, sir. In fact, an analysis of the 2021 expenditures for the Ministry of Health shows that these two companies were awarded 85% of the total budget allocated for the ministry, a whooping $17.9 billion, sir, 98 million US dollars in contracts. Sir, another procurement detail of interest. In May 2021, a company, Health International Inc., was awarded a contract for $236 million for the rental of a warehouse for the storage of pharmaceuticals and medical supplies. $236 for 2020. The Speaker, Mr. Speaker, no guess for the location of the company. Queens Atlantic Industrial Site, Rumvelt, Georgetown, sir. And they speak, sir, about the money. $236 million was rented, sir. No public disclosure, nothing at all, sir. Mr. Speaker, here's another one. The Public Procurement Commission issued the following letters to all agencies, sir, in 2019. And this is a letter I know you like it. And it's addressed to all permanent secretaries, regional executive officers, head of agencies, and head of departments, sir. And I just quote the last part of it. Procuring agencies are advised that no contracts are, the subject is procurement, suspension and debarment regulations 2019. Procuring entities are advised that no contract shall be awarded to an entity that has been debarred by the Commission. The list of debarred contractors is maintained by the Commission's website, sir, and I checked up to yesterday, sir, they're still there. And should be checked prior to the award of any contract. Please see attached a list of contractors debarred by the Commission effective October the 26th and 27th, 2019. Sir, and they have a list. I'll just read some, sir. Mohammed Yunus, sir. Mohammed Faisal Yunus, trading as Yunus Civil and Building Construction Services. China Railway Forest Group Guyana Inc. VDALIP Enterprises, sir, VDALIP Enterprises, sir, it has some other names. Sabrina Wilson and a few companies and individuals. Sir, that is the Public Procurement Commission. Debarred this was a legally sitting constitutional body. Sir, despite being banned by the Public Procurement Commission, two contracts were awarded by the Central Housing and Planning Authorities, one of $890 million, sir, and one, sir, from Region 9 of $30 million, sir. The VDALIP, they're a blacklisted company, VDALIP, Constitution. Additionally, sir, contracts were awarded, sir, and I see the Prime Minister just ups and runs, sir, because they just awarded a contract for Myla. A Myla falls to China Railway Forest Group, blacklisted companies, sir, blacklisted for fraudulent practices. Sir, and of course, sir, there were like several contracts awarded to humans. Sir, the PPPC cannot even obey our laws. Mr. Speaker, what is of interest is not what's included in the budget of the Ministry of Public Works, sir, but what has not been included. In budget 2021, the sum of $105 million was included for the studies and works to transform Lethem Airport to a regional hub, sir. You can remember, you can recall that they regaled that. A new bridge at Wisma and the construction of a new stelling at Perica, sir. The honorable member just regaled us about the Perica to Supernam crossing. So after spending $102 million in 2021, these projects have vanished from budget 2022 without a single word, sir, from the minister or anyone, sir. Sir, the government will be expending $2.6 billion, they're saying, to upgrade the Linden to Dyke Highway, and another $6 billion, sir, to upgrade the Linden to Mabura Road. Yet they lack the foresight to make a better bridge, which are linking these $2 billion roads, sir. And the honorable member just came and said, oh, that is forward thinking. Sir, if that is forward thinking, sir, don't ever let us go backwards, sir. Mr. Speaker, I like to get to my remit. Sir. Oil and gas. Mr. Speaker, Guyana has been tremendously blessed with huge oil and gas resources. We're grateful to the international oil companies that has helped us unlock our potential in this area, thus providing increased financial resources to our country. However, our governance systems must improve to prevent much wastage of these resources through inefficiencies and corruption. Without an upgrade in our present governance system, our non-oil economy will see little, if any, growth, at least not in keeping with our oil-rich economy. Mr. Speaker, we see the deficiencies in our political and economic governance systems glaringly exposed in Budget 2022. We see a few mega projects described to be very important and transformative. The government says that they are so important and so transformative that we don't need time to study them properly. Let information guide our decision-making process. We see little emphasis on our primary tertiary education institution, the University of Guyana, to build capacity among our citizens. We see little investment in research and development activities, which investment will provide the opportunity for our highly trained professionals to work in Guyana on our major technical problems and challenges, the solutions of which will drive national development. Our lack of intention to research, for instance, is manifestly obvious in our ignorance to the cause of low fish catch. More so, the lack of appropriate research and technology will likely cause the $200 million solution in the budget allocated for fish cages to fail, thus condemning another group of hard-working Guyanese to the breadline. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2022 is filled with throwing money at issues without proper analysis. Just last week, the government refused to do a proper analysis on the pipeline proposal for bringing gas to shore, to allow the Parliamentary Natural Resource Committee to assess its viability, which is another glaring example of poor governance. Mr. Speaker, a detailed study of this project would show that the pipeline solution proposed is simply not the best to utilize our natural gases resources. The pipeline, the gas to shore solution, is much too expensive. It is transporting gas for electricity generation at a cost of $4.50 per million BTU, a cost for transportation that exceeds the average market price of gas worldwide over the past year. This cannot and will not result in cheaper electricity for our nation. Mr. Speaker, to illustrate further, What a study would have revealed is that only recently the proposed 1,800-kilometer pipeline designated to transport 1.2 billion cubic feet of gas per day between Israel and the EU has been put on hold. Pause partly because of concerns of the lack of financial feasibility expressed both by the Israeli and the US government. This concern about feasibility for the pipeline project should have raised a red flag for our Guyana pipeline project, since the EU pipeline would have been transporting gas at more than 30% less cost than our pipeline project. Mr. Speaker, if the government had agreed to further studies into this project, they would have been aware that in some scenarios, transporting gas in the form of compressed natural gas, CNG, to shore in ISO containers is much more cost effective than a pipeline. A study would have likely brought to light that transporting gas to shore by ISO containers would have been almost 75% cheaper than a pipeline. Further studies would have likely brought to light that ISO container method of transporting gas has the possibility of opening up huge export markets for Guyana into CARICOM and Brazil. Mr. Speaker, if the government were willing to conduct more detailed analysis, they would have discovered that a private sector company has a take-or-pay contract with a power generating company in Central America to supply CNG by ISO containers for electricity generation, and has applied to the US Department of Energy for approval to ship CNG to Central America and the Caribbean by this method, using its technology and experience in the use of this method of gas transportation. Mr. Speaker, the opportunities to utilize our gas resources are enormous. And as we have stated before, the opposition will lend our support to the government in negotiations with the Stabroek Block operators in getting a better oil contract, lower prices for our gas, and better conditions for the Guyanese public. Mr. Speaker, on the vexing matter of flaring. Mr. Speaker, flaring is the disposal of waste gas produced with the oil into the atmosphere. This gas is known to contain over 250 identified toxins, including benzene, metals such as mercury and arsenic, sour gas with hydrogen sulfide, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen oxide. These form acids in the atmosphere and fall back onto the earth and in our waters as acid rain. SUR also produce carbon dioxide and methane, which are the two main contributors to greenhouse gases and climate change, a danger that the entire world is fighting against. Mr. Speaker, the law of the land is very clear when it comes to flaring. First, clause 3.6 of the EPA permits expressly prohibits flaring, with exceptions being made for flaring during startup of the FPSO, emergencies, or periods of maintenance. The unexpected failure of Exxon's equipment at the beginning of operation prompted the coalition government to take action to stop flaring, including severely reducing oil production and revisions of the EPA permits to ensure compliance with our laws. Mr. Speaker, the PPP callously reversed the zero flaring mandate. With this reversal, the PPP now gives Exxon the license to flare any amount if they pay a fee of $45 per ton of carbon dioxide flare. The PPP declaration that the fine of $45 per ton of carbon dioxide equivalent emitted is an improvement. It's nothing but a laughable sham, giving Exxon the license to flare. Money talks, sir, and our environment suffers. Mr. Speaker, the most worrying was the most recent statement by Exxon that it has still not fixed the flaring problem, which has been ongoing since the start of operations 2 years ago. The government has total disregard for the nation's health, safety, and environment, which was made clear, sir, when the government ministers continue parroting Exxon's position that Guyana is carbon sink, so that it has the capacity to take in more pollutants. This, sir, is coming from a government that is also pushing a green agenda. Mr. Speaker, the foregoing also highlights that the current PPPC administration is more interested in prioritizing monetary gains over the protection of the environment, safety, and health, which is an unnecessary and dangerous choice, since today's technology makes it commonplace for both environmental protection and monetary gain to be achieved at the same time, especially considering that Exxon is comfortably and willingly achieving these targets in other countries, such as the United States. Mr. Speaker, on assumption of office, the PPPC has reversed the position that Guyana should be financially covered for any and all spills. The little or no coverage at all. When they reversed the agreement between the coalition and Exxon for the company to obtain the maximum insurance coverage on the market, with the remainder being covered by the three parent companies of EEPGL, thus all adding to full unlimited liability coverage. Mr. Speaker, the limited insurance coverage against all risks pose a severe risk to Guyana, leaving us vulnerable to financial bankruptcy without the means to clean up any oil spill, not to mention the nation's exposure to lawsuits from bordering countries. So the BP oil spill in the Gulf cost approximately $70 billion and the environmental damages persist. It is rather stunning with the proposed increase in production that the government is now talking about having Exxon obtain insurance to the value of only $2 billion. Sir, it begs the following question. Did Exxon cancel the $2.5 billion in private insurance that was put in place under the coalition government? Why would the government feel satisfied at only $2 billion worth of liability coverage when the BP spill in the Gulf of Mexico cost more than $70 billion? Sir, and if the government is satisfied with only $2 billion insurance coverage, how would any cost over and above that will be covered? Mr. Speaker, in similar fashion as they have addressed flaring, sir, the PPPC they've reversed every single progressive measure that we have put in place in dealing with oil production. The PPPC, upon taking office, immediately reversed the coalition's zero dumping of produced water mandate that was developed by the EPA, GGMC, the Department of Energy, and independent international consultants. This mandate was consistent with the World Bank's international standards that require re-injection and not dumping of this water that is 3 times hotter than the ocean and contains oil, radioactive elements, mercury, lead, arsenic, and other toxic chemicals. There is now a serious question surrounding the cause on the drop of fishing quantities offshore in Guyana as it relates to this dumping of produced water. Mr. Speaker, no one with any inkling of common sense would think that throwing all of those billions of gallons of hot, radioactive and toxic water into our clean oceans would not impact our fish life. And most egregious is the government's nonchalant attitude towards a study that would find out what the impact is on our fishing environment. Mr. Speaker, in September, sir, of 2020, the Commissioner of GRA, sir, reported that the audit of Exxon's pre-production costs, reportedly some US $460 million, was completed and handed over to the government. Mr. Speaker, the nation was stunned to learn 2 weeks ago that this is not the case. Further, 15 months later, after not making a single public comment, and now the government now wants us to believe that the process undertaken by the international auditors and supervised by GRA was defective. 15 months after, sir, not a single word. Mr. Speaker, even if, and we give them the benefit of the doubt, even if that was the case, why wait 15 months to inform the public? Why has this not been a matter of urgency for the government? After all, sir, an audit of the claimed pre-production costs would have provided an invaluable insight to the billing practices of the operator. Mr. Speaker, the government continued failure to audit Exxon's $9.5 billion spent is tantamount to the government aiding and abetting the fleecing of the Guyana resources. The PPP's excuse that the process has been stymied because of the absence of strong local groups to do audits is quite frankly, sir, unacceptable. Sir, Mr. Speaker, it is estimated that an audit of Exxon's expensive claim can garner savings of up to US $1 billion, far more than the US 604 being removed from the NRF fund.
Honorable member, at 19:07, I'll have to ask that you get an extension.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the honorable be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip, for the opposition. Honorable member, you have 5 minutes to continue, so you can conclude.
So failure to do these audits is a commission of wrongdoing and malfeasance in office. No excuse or political grandstanding can absolve the government of this grave sin against this nation. Mr. Speaker, no one buys a bottle of water that is not full because you can see through the container. No one buys fruits from our local vendors if the product is visibly damaged. However, sir, if you buy a bottle of cooking gas, you cannot see if you're getting value unless the bottle is weighed on a standard scale, or unless you believe the seal has been properly set and not been tampered with. This is what the government is asking our nation to accept. A product from a supplier without verification. Mr. Speaker, there have been repeated public requests for the Minister of Natural Resources to provide daily production information for the oil we are paying Exxon to explore for us, to drill for, to store, and mostly to sell for us. To date, there has been no information. There have been no figures to perform analysis on, no production data which can be tabulated with the corresponding oil prices to ensure that we are receiving value for our oil. So the Guyanese citizens, the main stakeholder in all of this, remain in ignorance and cannot check what we have been told. Mr. Speaker, this lack of transparency dominates the PPP activities in the oil and gas sector, and quite frankly, characterizes the PPP activity in general, and should be concerning to all stakeholders, wherever they may be. Mr. Speaker, there was a disturbing report in our local newspapers about Guyanese workers complaining that they were forced to eat leftovers on the FPSOs. This was disturbing on several fronts. However, what was the most glaring was that the Ministry of Labor summoned the recruiting firm, held discussions with the recruiting firm, and were pleased with the outcome of these discussions. Clearly, this is a case of a meeting between friends and not a concern of regulatory oversight and non-compliance. Further, Mr. Speaker, the recruitment firm reported that due to the company's protocols, the clients, SBM, would normally eat first and then the service staff. Nowhere in the response by the Ministry of Labor was it reported that this practice was addressed. Mr. Speaker, the segregation of eating places was discontinued with apartheid and the Jim Crow laws of the South. It is sad that in the 21st century, our government is allowing such practices to resurface, causing Guyanese to be treated as second-class citizens in our own country. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, we have stated before that the opposition will support the government in defining constitutional reform provisions that will result in a bipartisan approach to addressing our national challenges and opportunities. We will support new systems of governance which will facilitate world-class management of all areas of our economy and society. Guyana has been extremely blessed by the Almighty. Let us use our blessings not just to calculate averages that look good on paper, while the standard of living of our people is declining, but rather with wisdom to improve the lives of all our citizens while positively impacting our region. I close with a reminder of the saying that we are as strong as our weakest link. Mr. Speaker, too many links are getting weaker. The time to fix them, sir, is now. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I now call on the Honorable Minister of Natural Resources, the Honorable Vikram Barrett.